Hi Daria. So as promised, I'm going to go through the images now, and so we'll make a start and make some comments on these. The first image, as much time as I took on this image and as good as it looks, I'm probably going to be replacing out this image simply because this waterfall is seasonal, and once it rains it's great, and if it's not raining it's dry, so we're probably going to replace out this image, so we won't get too worried about that one. This image, this is not my image, and it needs a little bit more work, and I'll run through this one. It's a tricky image, don't get me wrong. It's got huge color casts in it, and it's quite an old image. So for this one, I'll just quickly go through what I would do for this image. So one of the first things that I'll add in here is a color balance, because there is a huge amount of blue in this image. It's there's virtually no reds or yellows throughout the rocks here. It's overrun with the color cast. So if I just go through this, you'll soon see that it gives you a level of control that other filters can't quite produce. And while the color balance doesn't work sometimes, other times it's really good. So I'm just quickly going to go through just making some tweaks and correcting the color cast that I can see in this. Okay, so as we can see, the color cast was basically making the image quite flat, and there's some more pop now with the image. Secondly, the reds and the yellows in the image still need a little more of a tweak. So I always start off in selective color, and as you can see, adding yellow in is removing the blue color cast further, and pulling back the cyan is helping as well. And I'm just going to go back through them one more time. About there. And then with the reds and the yellows, I should be able to, I'm going to have to, some of them, it looks like there's virtually no red information in this image whatsoever. And the yellows, okay, so I'm getting a little bit in the highlights here. So I'm just pulling that back to make the headland pop a bit more. Okay, there we go. So we've got a bit of red in the magenta channel. And there's a little bit of yellow there in the headland, and a little bit there as well. So just lastly, the whites, because this here is just so blasted out, I don't know if the information is there or not. There's not really anything there. Sometimes you can get a little bit of detail, but it's just simply not there. It isn't a good image. I didn't have time to get the drone up to do this image. So I have to use this image for now. I'll probably go and shoot this another day, because as mentioned, Noosa is kind of my backyard. So that's essentially. There's probably a little bit more in the exposure as well. You've got something there. I'll just create a new exposure. And while I'm there, I'll just look at vibrance and hue and saturation, because it does seem to be a bit oversaturated at the moment with all these tweaks that I've done. And what was the other one I said? Hue saturation. So particularly in the cyans, so I've pulled that down and that's helped. Okay, that's probably helping as well, just making it not look oversaturated. The blues, we don't want this image obviously looking flat, so I do want to put a bit of something in there. You can try for the yellows, I suppose. Don't really think so. That's all fine. And I might just go back finally to selective color and try in the blues here. Yeah, you've had to go with the blues. Try and get rid of that magenta that's in this area here just now. Okay, so it's well, it's actually worked out pretty good. It's not too far off now. Just have a quick look in the greens. Yeah, you've had a look in the greens. Just pull it back even more because I've played with it, and just mute the saturation a little bit, make it look a little bit more real. Yeah, something like that. So, okay, so you can see the difference there. And the main, I mean, there were lots of tweaks there. I suppose the main one is the color balance. That really helps. And obviously other tweaks in there as well. So I'll save that this Photoshop file. If you could create the final file and upload that to the website, that would be great. Okay, so I've come to the next image here, and it's pretty close. It's actually, I mean, that's probably how it would look in real life. Unfortunately, people love to see vibrant colors, and there's just a couple of tweaks, I think, with this one to make it more like what it felt like to be driving along this stretch, which was quite an experience with these colors here. So I've gone into Photoshop, and I noticed that there wasn't a selective color in your edits. So I've got I've just gone through and I've just turned that on and off a couple of times. So I've increased the well, I'll just go through the settings. So it's just simply the neutrals, the reds, and the yellows, and those in together have just made it pop a little bit more. With that said, the sand here now that that has been brought in, it's probably all a little bit too oversaturated. So I just played around with turning the hue saturation off this layer here, and I think that that works better now. So it's just got more in the midtones and more a little bit more in the reds and yellows, and I think that that overall, if I just how do I do it? If I come back to there, so there it is, on and off. So I'll go ahead and save that or update the Photoshop file on pCloud. If you could create the final file and upload it to the website, that'd be great. Okay, so I've pulled this image up and that's pretty good. Probably a little bit more in the neutral blacks, just to give it a little bit more pop. A little bit more in the reds and the yellows. Just give it a selective color, see if that just makes it a little bit more colorful. Yeah, I think it's a theme here. So more in the neutrals, reds and yellows, potentially a color balance, a slight color balance, and see how you go with that one. Yep, same again. So a little bit more in the neutrals, a bit more in the reds and yellows. Should work well there. These cars here, can we grab a selection of the cars and then basically stretch them down? So you may lose these cars here, and then these three cars, well, that car there would end up down here, so to speak, so that they don't look stretched, which is happening at the end of the drone lens. A little bit more in the neutrals, a little bit more in the reds and yellows. A little bit more on the neutrals, not a heck of a lot. A little bit more on the yellows and the reds. Yep, the green's looking a little bit grey. Should be just a little bit greener. Yeah, neutrals again. The contrast is just all a little bit flat throughout. I think if you play around with the neutrals, you'll get a little bit more on the contrast. It needs a little bit more exposure, I think. It needs to be a little bit brighter. Same for that image. Same for that image. This one. Okay.